Chopin wrote 21 nocturnes. And this is really going back to the roots for me, because I did 11 of them in Sonata Secret's first 6 months on YouTube. So I hope you enjoy this one as well. This is one of the longer, more extensive nocturnes towards the end of the line. Only the set of Opus 62 was composed later. And number 1 in Opus 55 is the famous F minor. Generally, it's quite a typical nocturne. Sweeping, floating ambience, waves of broken chords in the left hand, and a soaring, reflective melody on top. But it's also a duet of 2 voices, both in the right hand. Like the nocturnes in G major, Opus 37 number 2, and in D flat major, Opus 27 number 2, they also have 2 voices, but they are more glued together in thirds. Here they're really independent voices. And harmonically, it's almost always going somewhere in modulation. Most commonly between E flat major and its relative key of C minor, as so often in Chopin when he wants to keep both major and minor sonorities within the tonal realm of a piece. So a B flat 7 always points to an E flat major, and a G7 always points to a C minor. And the form is equally interesting, because everything seems just seamlessly put together, but there are points where material returns and is transformed. Now let's go through the sections one at a time in detail to see how Chopin achieves this amazing music. So we start with a signal, a high B flat, forte, and then enter with a trill and the left hand arpeggios. And this is kind of a main theme in E flat major, very stable, long notes. And the arpeggios are kind of wider in the beginning than they are later. But it's actually only from bar 2 that we get into the main theme path. When it returns later, it has another start that we don't get here because we start with a signal. So let's continue. Returning to E flat. But immediately now, we kind of plunged into an exploration. So here we get an entry of the lower voice. Let's just listen to the duet with those 2 voices. And so on. And harmonically, this is exploring, so it's immediately C7 to F minor, and then G7 to C minor, and then D sus and to D7 to G minor. It's actually G major, but minor. And then B flat 7 to E flat. And just this polyrhythm here. Here we have 8 against 3. And this piece is like the final boss when it comes to polyrhythms. If you can do 3 against 2, that's nothing. Here we need 4 against 3 in the next bar. Then we need 5 against 3. We need 7 against 3, and here 8 against 3, and to top it off 7 against 6. I will show when they appear in the piece, but yeah, here 8 against 3. This is really, the lower voice has a comment here to the something needs to be clarified to here. And then have this amazing surge when we go back to E flat major. So this is the proper main theme, 4 bars of it, and so now we hear the real start is in the high register. So from bar 2, this is the same as we have in the beginning after. But now we have the proper start. And let's listen to the duet again. And this is a practice tip, as I did before, to play only those voices with both hands, because it's much easier to control them independently with 2 hands than it is to play them in the same hand as it needs to be in the final version. And it takes a lot of practice to get to that point where you can have the freedom in one voice. And I practiced this for weeks and months before I find that freedom. And it helps to know how the voices behave independently. So how to phrase them. Now it's so lovely counterpoint. They're just 2 voices creating harmonies. But then of course it's harder. That's 4 bars of a main theme. Now we get a kind of a transitional passage of 4 bars, because we land on E flat major and we get the 7. So it's pointing forward with the 7, and it's kind of peculiar arpeggios now with the chromatic element. Again now, it gets hard with the pedal here. You need to kind of clean out the chromatic notes a little bit, but not too much either. You want to keep the bass. But this is 4 bars with this just the upper voice. The lower voice goes on a coffee break for the next page, so it's a solo for the upper voice. It's so intense, all this dialogue, so it's nice to have a little bit more breathing room in a way. A bit calmer. So it's E flat 7 to A flat, and then we add the 7 to A flat. So it keeps pointing forward. Jumps to B flat, and now so here 2 bars with chromatic shifts. We keep the A flat on top, and the bass goes B flat, diminished, goes up chromatically, F minor, D flat 7, and then it doesn't resolve, but we have this tritone shift going from D flat 7 to G7. So G7 points to C minor, but we're now in G minor. This is D7. Back to G7, so back to C minor here, and it's reaching higher now, eventually we find a cadence in E flat major on this lovely high note. Oh, and a nice polyrhythm of 10 against 6. It's actually not exactly the same thing as 5 against 3, because this motion, if you split it in 2 times 5, you get this B flat. This is not really the important note, so you don't want to have too much emphasis to play, even if that's the mathematically, because you want to have it and this pace just goes on with new material for some time. Now we get this nice chord. That's a Neapolitan, or it feels like it. It's a Neapolitan in C minor, and we're in E flat, but they're kind of close, so G7 pointing back to C minor. And these bars are so great. The melody is kind of tries to find the way, but it struggles and it's quite unsettled, going around a bit of an echo maybe from the F minor Nocturne, Opus 55 number 1, going around this C. Like not really getting anywhere else, and this melody is trying to find its place here around these notes. And eventually we land on this E flat on the C minor, and then tender A flat on top. And this is the cue for the lower voice to return from the coffee break and has an entry here. And now we get 3 bars of intense chromatic modulation, and kind of the tonal stability starts to dissolve, and this is just an amazing place. So now we've reached F flat major, or E major, but it's spelled as F flat. It's very far away from E flat, but then we have the old tritone shift to B flat 7, and that prepares the return up to E flat major and the main theme. And it's so tender, and the duet is really, they're close together. And this C flat, I love this. So we keep the C flat suspended, and then when we go to B flat 7, let's take it again. Do you hear it? It's a dissonance. It's the flat 9 of B flat, and it's such a lovely dissonance. But you need to keep it enough tone of it. And now just 1 bar left. We have some diminished chords and this trill and this amazing surge of energy, and take a lot of time here, I think, to play on the 8th notes in the left hand. So it's the return of the main theme, 4 bars. It's the same material, but slightly elaborated. The upper voice is more excited with this septuplet, 7 against 6. And the lower voice is even more excited with 7 against 3. It's almost triumphant, and it's kind of always like this. If you've gone through something difficult and uncertain, you're stronger on the other side if you get through it, as we are here. Then this transitional passage is the same with the E flat 7, although it's a small variation in the left hand. The first time it's just going up, now it's going around. I don't know really why. Maybe Chopin just wanted some variation. You cannot make it too easy for the pianist. It has to have 2 separate versions. But now with the lower voice. The first time it's only 2 bars with a quick harmonic modulation. Now it's 4 bars and slower harmonic pulse. We get another surge. Or do we? It's diminuendo. Lovely harmonic progression, going around and then returning to E flat major. So we B flat 7, going to D flat 7, to G flat. This is a dominant, D flat 7 to G flat. But now, so going from G flat to C7, that's the tritone shift again. A lot of tritone shifts here, but it's special because we keep the B flat in the bass, is the 7 in the bass when it's C. And C7 to F minor with melodies on the 9 to B flat. Voice gets excited. So in the end it's just F minor, B flat 7, E flat major, 2 5 1, but the real effect comes before. And here we get a repeat of this whole passage, the same material. But the lower voice is excited. Fun, this like little comment, did you know that? Now it's of course another variation, it's trill in the lower voice, and there's a small difference here. The diminuendo starts earlier than the first time. The first time this is really detailed, but without the trill, crescendo and diminuendo. So the left hand gets to go up in crescendo, but the second time, when the trill starts, you can start the diminuendo earlier because it's so much energy in the trill and you need to prepare to make it even more sensitive what comes later. That's my explanation of why it's different. this is super hard to do one voice on the top of the hand with a trill in the lower part of the hand at the same time. You have a lot of that in some Beethoven sonatas and some other Chopin works. It's kind of just practice to be independent. To keep the trill going and then add. But I go up with the fingers, so I don't do perfect legato because it's easier when you have a trill. And finding his way back to E flat major. And here we have only the coda left. And now the harmony is slightly more stable, or it's more grounded, at least, with a E flat in the bass as a pedal point for some time. But we switch, it's interesting on the surface, we switch from E flat major to minor. And this is a C flat 7. Or it's actually C flat augmented 6 chord. The A is +6 because of the harmonic function, but it's kind of an inverted voicing. Normally you have it's a C flat in the bass, and that's kind of the normal, but more spacious if you have the augmented 6 in the bass. Well, you have E flat in the bass, but back to E flat major. So this is the switch from minor to major. That's called a piccolo third. And a lot of the nocturnes that are in minor, they end in this way, switching to major with this piccolo third. And in this one, I mean, we are in E flat major in most of the piece, but it's like Chopin goes to minor just to go back to major in this nice way. So. Very nice. And also in the melody, we have this like a melting feature that makes the melody shine by raising it an octave. What's better than 1 octave lift? 2 octave lifts. And now we're at the final descent. After the lift we have to come down. Now the upper voice shows off with the quadruplets. So 4 against 3. And now the lower voice says, that's nothing, I can do 5 against 3. And it's like the upper voice stays and cheers on the lower voice with this B flat. And in the final bar, this group of 5 notes divides into 2 voices that goes up and down in a counterpoint. Really cool way. And by the way, 5 against 3 in this place, it's very free, like floating. So it's more free than the rest of the piece. But suddenly here, for the first time we come to a stop and there's no continuous 8th notes. They have been in the left hand for the whole piece, but now we're at the final line, we get some straight chords to like put a firm end to the piece. And this feels like the final arpeggio, but it doesn't match evenly. Left hand only gets the B flat, and that's not a proper resolution. So we have to try some chords again. they have accents because they're more insisting, and this time it's right. We find the way back to E flat major. In a triumphant forte, it's a little bit odd way to end this spacious feeling of the coda, but it's of course merited. The same way as it begins, it is a big piece, it needs a big ending. You can't end it in just a small way. He's even written like a crescendo on the chord. You can't do that on piano, but the feeling is just a big vibrating chord of E flat major. And that's Chopin's Nocturne Opus 55 number 2. You can check out my full performance of this piece in a separate video, and a special shout out to my Patreon sponsors Emmen, S. Engelbrektsson and S. Yao. Thanks for watching Sonata Secrets, and I'll see you in another video.